everybody, to this episode of Strategy and Power Shifts. My name is Paul Nillison. I'm the host of this podcast. Today we're going to be discussing the energy transition together with Pedro Azagra. He's the Corporate Development Director at the Iberdrola Group, and together with my colleagues Carlos Fernandez Landa and Carlos Sanchez, both partners in our energy deals practice in Spain and heavily involved in the energy transition. So welcome Pedro, welcome Carlos,
Thank you. Good morning.
Now, thank you all for being here, and thank you also for being here this morning to share your thoughts on the energy transition. And as a brief introduction, I think we all agree that there's a strong need to decarbonize our energy system and to make this transition into a new world where we have more renewables and more interaction between companies and customers, and we're all delivering the energy transition. We recently conducted a study into the 40 largest listed energy companies around the world, what we call the GT40, and the publication is called Power Strategies. And we looked at the positioning of different companies, and the ambition is that we actually follow these companies over the next years to see what paths they follow and how they develop. And Iberdrola was one of the leading companies that we identified, so it's an honor and a privilege to have you here this morning, Pedro, and to talk about what Iberdrola is doing and how to navigate in this energy transition.
I totally agree with you, Paul. The sector is changing a lot, so we are living a very interesting moment of time within the sector. We are observing different innovative business models, different ways of managing the value chain. Iberdrola is one of the key companies in the sector, but also I have to highlight that it's been very, very innovative. That's why we invited Pedro, to this interview. It's always a pleasure to have this discussion with Pedro, being one of the top management at Iberdrola, leading the strategy and corporate development department. In addition, also Pedro, in his long career, he's also teaching at one of the best business schools university here in Spain. So that's why, as I said, it's a pleasure always have this discussion with Pedro. And Pedro, I'm very curious to hear from you. What's the keys of your winning strategies to be successful in the energy transition?
Great. So, Pedro, perhaps as a start, many people know Iberdrola, of course, but for the benefit of all our listeners, could you briefly tell us what Iberdrola does, where you're active, and what your focus is?
So thank you, first of all, for the invitation on behalf of Iberdrola and my boss, Chairman Galan. I think it's an honor to be here with you. As you know, Iberdrola is one of the top 5 utilities in any measure, on a global basis, putting aside some state-owned companies. We have more than 50 gigawatts of generation, out of which, around 31 gigawatts are of, renewables. I think we have, above 31 million points of supply, and, we have been very consistent since the early 2000s, basically with a very, very clear strategy. I think this strategy that, to have a boss which is a visionary person helps a lot. I think it's, something that in the beginning we were very alone. I think at that time, governments, competitors, many people, banks, lenders, didn't see the world coming in this direction. I think I'm proud that PwC since the very beginning, we're talking to friends here who have been together with us for more than 20 years. They had the same view. And it's been a pleasure to work together for so many years, with PwC and its team, with a clear objective of a transition that nobody was seeing, and we saw it together 20 years ago. I think Iberdrola model has different characteristics. We are very focused, as you know, in regulated activities since the very beginning. This is not a trend. Infrastructure funds, other people showing up. I think we're very keen since the early 2000s. We have been always committed since our first strategic plan in 2001 to clean and competitive energies. I think every single strategic plan that we announce every year with our recurrent reviews, we are focused on operational efficiency. That's a must. We should never forget about that. And I see many competitors, it takes them years and years of integration, when they do deals, etc. I think since 2000 we were clear that the future could not be just one country. We focus on international diversification, but with a focus in key big markets. I think that has been also one of the differences, the size of the markets, countries where you can continue to invest and deploy our CapEx on a yearly basis, And second, with an appropriate measure of rating. Some very good AAA countries with some very attractive emerging markets with a nice view to the future. As you know, our company is keen on financial strength. Every single presentation, every quarter we update on that topic, and rating, financial strength has been key in all our strategic plans. We believe talent is probably the key new item in companies globally, and that's why the workforce, executives, that's the new trend that everybody's seeing. We've seen that a long time ago, and to have the best teams, the best workforce is the key thing for the future. That's a little bit a summary of what Iberdrola is, what we have done, and a pleasure to have done many things together.
Thank you. I think Iberdrola plays a very interesting and innovative role in the energy market. I'm very curious to hear the thinking behind this. Pedro, can you tell us a bit more about Iberdrola's strategy? How would you describe the strategy for the future, and how is Iberdrola currently positioning itself in the energy market?
First comment is, as opposed to many competitors that at most they give you 1 year projection, we are very comfortable since the year 2001 to usually give 3 to 5 year projections ahead of us to our investor and analyst base. I think that shows the comfort in what we are doing and what we're going to be doing, and actually delivering most of the times in everything we say. Our current strategic plan, 2018-2022, means 34 billion of investment of capex, and almost all of that is certain. We know what to do, where to do, and when to do. So the delta of pending items is very small. I think when you look at the geographies where we're doing that, the US, the UK, AAA countries, by the way, Spain, Mexico, and Brazil, and in a certain way in some small countries, where we're doing also renewables. But those, 5 geographies are a pleasure. Okay, those are big countries, a lot of opportunities, and that way we focus in those countries. It's also a lack of management distraction, as opposed to being 23 places and basically management, losing sight of the key things we have ahead of us. I think it's nice that, those 34 billion, 86% is in regulated or what we call long-term contracted activities. But it's also nice to show that 47%, is invested in networks and 39% in renewables. I think that shows that, we know what to do, not yesterday, but 20 years ago. And therefore, all these investments in networks and in renewables, I think, is due to very stable regulatory, frameworks. Otherwise, that will not be the case. And a support by investors and lenders and advisors, to continue doing what we are doing. I think, we have a diversified, profile. We have, over 30% in dollars, 29% in euros, 17%, in sterling, and 18% in Brazilian reals. I think that's a very nice portfolio. So from that point of view, we believe, the right mix, going forward. As you can imagine, the key objective, of course, is, earnings, is EBITDA. We have investors, and therefore, we always give, targets, net profit 2022 around, 3.7 billion. We have an increase of, 30%, of EBITDA, approaching, 12 billion, euros. So, very nice figures, but, the delivery of a lot of work, by a lot of people. I think, when you have this context of growing demand, as you can imagine, the energy transition requires the implementation of a clean, reliable, and intelligent, energy model, with facilities for electrification of the economy. That's the key issue right now. Okay, we have been doing, a lot of things in digitalization. We have been doing a lot of things in smart metering, and I can continue, but it's not today. We've been doing that for a long time. So that's why this transition model, we believe we started that in the late 90s, especially in the first strategic presentation when we did our plan in 2001 when Chairman Galan joined. I think we're seeing now the result. New opportunities continue to show up. Okay, we are very happy to see these transmission projects we are building, in different countries, in the US, in the UK, and in Brazil. We are very happy to see that, a lot of people finally are joining offshore as well. We were very happy to see a lot of people in onshore when, nobody was doing onshore in, 2000 and so on. And as you can see in offshore, we have a nice pipeline, offshore is not something you do today. It's something you do many years ago, and you see the results right now. We're doing, as you know, offshore projects in the UK, offshore projects in Germany and in France, in the Baltic, also now in the US. So from that point of view, I think those are the new things, which are, quite nice to present. But I can tell you it's probably something we started 10 years ago, and we're seeing now the results. So my feeling is in May 2020, we'll do a strategic update and more to come, and obviously in the same direction that we've been doing in the past.
Pedro, as we discussed last time, many energy companies are announcing plans to reduce emissions from their activities. I know that Iberdrola reducing the emissions associated with the production of electricity is in your ADN. If I remember correctly from our latest conversation, renewable energy accounted for more than half of the company's own production in the last year, in 2019. What's your ultimate goal here?
I love this question because, as you know, there are many people, who are right now focused on zero emissions and things like that. And I think other people, we've been doing that, 20 years ago. So from that point of view, governments, we are very happy now to see the trend. Other companies, this is unstoppable. So from that point of view, we are pleased to see the trend now is global and everybody is aligned. It's a question of time. I think the strategy that we have been implementing since the early 2000s, of course, is focused in decarbonization and renewable energy, supported by a strong focus in innovation, by all the businesses. There is not one business who is missing that. All of them need to be focused. I think networks, let's not forget about that, is needed for renewables. Without networks, we cannot do a lot of things. I think it's very interesting. A meeting. My chairman was having, one of these, European roundtables with a lot of people, and you have this nice presentation by the technology companies, by all these other people, the future, what people like right now. And then my chairman went there, probably the last, and he said, this is very nice, but if you don't have electricity, there is nothing of this. So from that point of view, we are needed, and actually that's what you need from us. Thanks to the investments that we have done, 34 gigawatts, which is 60% of our 50 gigawatt generation fleet, are CO2 free. I think this figure will continue to increase because we are going in the same trend that I have mentioned before. On average, our generation portfolio CO2 emissions in the first 9 months of 2019 has only been 107 grams CO2 per kilowatt hour, with 73% of our production in the period free of CO2 emissions, even with a low rainfall within the period. Iberdrola welcomes, there is no doubt, the vision put forward in the European strategy and supports the goal of achieving net zero emissions European economy by 2050. We are totally aligned with them. Moreover, it considers the support of all of the stakeholders, public administrations, government, companies, and the public, which are actually leading many of the things going on right now, is crucial to achieve this goal. Net zero emissions by 2050 is a feasible goal. It is technically viable, and it is feasible given that the scenarios put forward by the European Union are based on a comprehensive review of the literature and on technologies that are under extensive study right now. More important, let's not focus on 2050. I think things have to be done now. So from that point of view, important message always to governments is, don't tell me just 2050, which is also very important. What do we do 2020? What do we do 2021? And what do we do between now and 2030? I think that that's also very important, because otherwise, future is nice, but the reality never comes. We need to focus also in the short term.
Okay, now that we've discussed Iberdrola's strategy for the future, I would also like to make a link with the developments that we are seeing in the energy market, and in particular with the transition that the energy sector is currently facing. Pedro, can you share with us some of your views on the energy transition, and what do you think that the big challenges will be?
I think Iberdrola position regarding objectives and policies to decarbonize the European economy, I think it's very simple. Let me give you some facts, and from that point of view, I think you see we are always at the lead of the effort and the messages and the reality as much as we can. The European Union climate strategy for 2050 must opt for a net zero emissions scenario. That's it. The electricity sector must remain at the forefront of the decarbonization process. We cannot be the number 3, the number 4. We need to be at the front of everybody. However, all sectors must be involved. Okay, the goals is not just one sector or is us personally at home. Every single sector has to be focused on achieving its goals. Current technologies developments, can provide a very strong base to achieve everything we're proposing at the government level, at the sector level, at the company level, and at the personal level. European and national authorities, not just one, not just the other one, all of them, they need to create the needed framework from a regulatory point of view in order to be able to implement these goals that we are putting on the table right now. We think every sector has to work, but let's put objectives to every sector. So we know what everybody has to do with a clear short-term and long-term objective. We believe it's very, very important to launch, an environmental tax reform. Our policy, our messages, our belief is very simple. Polluters have to pay, and there should be a fiscal sustainability. A couple of other comments. I think, a level playing field, that ensures real technology neutrality between energies and, technologies is a must. Otherwise there is going to be, a misbalanced approach to all these needs and actions, and therefore there will be no success. I think we need to make sure the public is aware, so there should be a clear, information plan to the public so they can understand what is being done, what the objectives are, and what the tasks everybody has to do. Promoting the location of investments associated with the energy transition in those regions that from a macro point of view are more needed. I think that's also something we should care about, focus, and actually implement and demonstrate that we are targeting that as a must. I think those are probably the key messages.
Thank you.
As you know, Pedro, there is a lot of discussion about the possibility that the funds can enter in the energy market. How important are customer experience and digitalization for Iberdrola, given this type of possible of other different kind of competitors?
Very important question. It's a trend. It's one of those topics everybody discusses right now, and that's why there has to be an answer. I think regardless of who those competitors are, digitalization is key, in the energy business. It's a must. I think it's a priority for Iberdrola, since the sector is facing, this transformation, with a, completely increasing in digital, areas, social and environment, and economic environment to meet the needs of the new demand. I think digitalization is critical. You cannot basically achieve those goals without that. I think according to a paper published by the World Economic Forum regarding the digital transformation, the electricity sector basically is moving, with around 1.3 trillion, value, of capture economy related items. So this is a very important part of the business globally, regionally, and in the different sectors and in our sector. So this is a must. We cannot basically avoid that. I think there are 4 areas where, in our opinion, there is some type of value creation opportunity that we should all consider. The first one is the asset life cycle management. I think technologies can make sure assets live longer, can actually provide some other type of assets we don't have right now. I think that's a must. Grid optimization and aggregation, very obvious. I think that's what digitalization is allowing us, and actually enhancing these networks. Integrated customer services. I think history told us that cannot live with one product, that you need several ones, you need several services. I think digitalization is allowing us to integrate those products and put them on the table to customers all together. And I think we just need to go beyond the electron. I think this is not just about one item that allows a result. We need to make sure that that commodity is properly used, and all these additional services and needs the customers have and the society, we need to put that on the table as well. As you can imagine, with 32 million points of supply, I think we're there. We understand what is coming. We've been there for a long time. I think our retail business uses big data and analytics to make sure we provide the right services. And just as an example, because I think also some numbers help to understand what Iberdrola is on this. in 2017, so we're talking about 3 years ago, it's not 3 years from now, 100% of our digital back office and digital channels for customers were digital in all our geographies. I think besides, our, front office processes are, already digital. Today, 50% of our customer service is digital, with a target, of achieving 75% 2 years from now, 2020.
Pedro, as a clear leader in the energy sector globally, with 32 million connections, all your investments worldwide, what are sort of the three recommendations you would have for your competitors? Obviously, without giving away the secret sauce, but what would you recommend others to do that are sort of following in your trail?
I think probably the first one is to have a clear strategy and make sure that you don't just copy people. You know what you're doing and you can show. But I think probably 3 comments or 3 ideas on that front. Anticipate trends. It's very important. It's a key factor for success. Adapt to those changes as soon as you can. You cannot just go years and years looking at other people and finally, I take the decision to do what other people were doing 20 years ago. And think long term. Okay, one of the things that I think Iberdrola we have always done is those 3-5-year strategic plans. Think about the future and fight for that. We have fought with you, in this case PwC, to try to achieve things, starting in 2001, that today is probably very easy to see, but we were totally alone. And I think that's the example, as we have done in onshore, we did in offshore, we have done in regulatory items, we have done in CO2 treatment, in the market. I think the important thing is always to be ahead, thinking long term. Short-term decisions, you make a lot of money, some people do, but that's not us. We are a sustainable, growing, company, but stable. These ups and downs and things like that, that's not our sector.
Pedro, would you then also say that these are the key ingredients that are going to keep making you successful then for the next 20 years? So you just described the past 20. Is this also the strategy for the next 20?
The answer is yes, together with the talent. We need the best people. We need to make sure that we get in this company, at all levels, people that they like the job, they see what the opportunities are, they anticipate the threats, and we find the solutions, and we get the best people here. I think talent is key in your company and ours as well.
Great, Pedro. Well, thank you for this very insightful discussion that we just had. I'm trying to find the sort of summary, which I think is very difficult because we heard so much interesting stuff. But the 3 things I think that struck me was one, having a clear long-term vision. And as you said, in the short term you can make a lot of money, but you need to have a long-term vision in order to make the right decisions. And I think you demonstrated that also with the journey that you've been following the past 20 years. That'd be one. The second, I think, is exactly what you said, this fight for talent. You need to have the best people at all levels with the right skill set in order to be able to deliver this transition. And one sentence that you had, which I really liked, was beyond the electron. And I'm gonna start using that if I may. But I think this sort of captures exactly what we need to do. Sort of, it's really being in the heart of the customer, going beyond the electron and actually helping them deliver this carbon-free world. So thank you for this insightful discussion. Thank you also to the 2 Carloses next to me. Last but not least then, for our listeners, don't forget to look at our Global Power Strategies publication, which you can find on our website, and I wish you all a great day. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.